They had survived bullets, hunger, and the frozen hell of the Eastern Front. But nothing prepared them for what America would do to their minds. February 1945, when 37 Soviet women soldiers stepped into Camp Shanks, New York, they expected interrogation, harsh treatment, maybe even punishment. They had no idea the real shock waiting for them was something completely different. The journey began on a storm-beaten ship crossing the Atlantic. Deep below deck, in a cold, dim cargo hold, the women huddled together in torn coats and boots held together with wire. These weren't soft women from propaganda posters. They were radio operators who had crouched in trenches, medics who dragged wounded men from artillery fire, snipers who counted kills in the snow outside Stalingrad, anti-aircraft gunners with calloused hands. Years of war had carved hardness into their faces. Years of Soviet rations had left their bodies thin and exhausted. Captured by the Germans near the Polish border, liberated by Americans, but rejected, at least for now, by their own government. Stalin believed any soldier taken prisoner was suspicious. So these women waited between nations, unsure of their future. Now, without explanation, they were being sent to America. No one asked their opinion. Soldiers simply obey orders. When the ship finally reached New York Harbor, the women were brought up to the freezing deck. They expected ruins, poverty, chaos. Instead, they froze at the sight before them. The Statue of Liberty, huge and green, rising from the gray water. Behind it, Manhattan, tall and shining, untouched by bombs. Not a single broken window. Katerina, a radio operator from Leningrad, felt her throat tighten. Her city had suffered 900 brutal days of siege. She had burned furniture to stay warm. She had watched buildings collapse in flames. And here was New York, perfect, bright, alive. Then came the smell. Not smoke, not rot, but bread baking, coffee, meat frying somewhere in the city. It didn't feel real. Buses took them through clean streets lined with stores full of goods, children playing in parks, cars everywhere. Irina, a sniper who had killed dozens of German soldiers, whispered, "Where are the ruins? Where are the ration lines?" There was no answer. At Camp Shanks, the women saw neat wooden barracks and relaxed guards. It didn't look like a prison. Still, they braced themselves. Processing was familiar. Names, ranks, belongings listed. Then an American officer explained they would be deloused and medically examined. Their bodies tensed. In German camps, delousing meant humiliation and suffering. But what they found inside shocked them more than cruelty ever could. The shower room was warm. Steam rose in the air. Clean white tiles lined the walls. Fresh towels waited on hooks. The attendants were women, calm and professional. They handed out real soap, real shampoo, showed how to adjust the water. Katerina stepped under the spray first. Hot water burst from the shower, strong and endless. She closed her eyes as months of cold and dirt washed away. The soap smelled like flowers. Around her, women began to cry quietly, not from pain, but from the simple shock of warmth, cleanliness, dignity. They washed their hair again and again, afraid this miracle might stop. When they dressed, they were given new undergarments, clean dresses, socks without holes, shoes that actually fit. Irina saw herself in a mirror and gasped. The thinness was still there, but she finally looked human again. Medical checks followed. The American doctors were direct, calm, and professional. No cruelty, no shouting, just treatment, vaccines, and notes about old wounds. The women didn't relax. Kindness confused them more than fear. Then came the mess hall. The warmth inside hit them first. Then the smell of food. On their trays, steaming mashed potatoes with butter, green beans, sliced beef with gravy, a warm roll, coffee, and even dessert. It felt impossible. They stared at the food, unable to move. This was more than some of them had eaten in months back home. Katerina stared at her tray, still trying to believe the food was real. Black bread, watery soup, and the rare taste of kasha, that was what she had lived on for years. In the German camps, even that felt like a luxury. But here, real beef, buttery potatoes, white bread. Her hands trembled as she tasted the first bite. Warm, rich, Almost unreal. Around her, the other women ate in silence, some crying, others devouring their food as if it might disappear. For the first time in months, Irina felt full. Uncomfortably full. Her body didn't know how to handle abundance. One woman even stopped eating halfway, sick from eating too quickly. A young American soldier came by collecting trays. He smiled politely, said something none of them understood, and moved on. No insults. No shouting. Just casual kindness. Then an officer announced, 3 full meals every single day. The same portions. The same routine. Every day. The words hung in the air like an impossible promise. That night, in the quiet barracks, whispers spread. "It's a trick," someone said. "They're fattening us for something." "No," another replied. "If they wanted us dead, we wouldn't be here." A third voice murmured, "Comfort is how they break us. They make us soft." Katerina lay on her bunk, a real bunk with a mattress, blankets, sheets, and felt more shaken than she ever had on the front lines. The Germans had been predictable. Brutal, but predictable. These Americans, she couldn't understand their rules. The barracks were clean, warm, spacious. The bathrooms shocked them most. Flushing toilets, running water, soap, mirrors, and showers available anytime. Irina turned the faucet on and off, watching hot water flow instantly, something that felt almost magical. Later, a female American lieutenant came with a translator to explain the rules. Roll call at 6:30, breakfast at 7 o'clock, work assignment starting tomorrow, lights out at 10 o'clock. Then she said the strangest thing of all. "If you need anything, tell us. Requests will be considered." Requests. The idea didn't make sense. Prisoners didn't make requests. Soldiers obeyed orders. Katerina lay awake long after lights out, listening to the steady breathing around her. She was clean, warm, fed, and somehow even more afraid. Because here, nothing followed the logic of war. Days settled into a rhythm. Wake to a bell. Roll call. Breakfast, eggs, toast, oatmeal, endless coffee sweetened with real sugar and milk. Work followed. Not torture, not punishment, just tasks. Laundry, kitchen duty, simple hospital chores. In the laundry, Katerina noticed the detail that shocked her most. American uniforms, mountains of them, changed every few days. In the Red Army, a uniform lasted weeks, patched until it fell apart. Here, soldiers dropped off clothes barely dirty. Where did America get so much? How could one country produce more clean clothes than some armies produced soldiers? The washing machines amazed them. Hot water, electric motors, automatic rinsing. What took 10 women all day back home, one machine handled alone. Lunch came. Then more work. Then dinner. Big portions, always hot, always enough. The women stopped feeling hungry after the first week, though some struggled with the richness of the food. Their bodies were still learning how to adapt. Evenings were quiet. They could rest, talk, or go to the recreation hall where Americans played films. Bright houses, full tables, cars, smiling families. It all looked like another world, maybe even propaganda. Still, the routine worked its way under their skin. Not through force, but through normal life. Letters from home finally arrived. Not often, but enough. Katerina read one from her cousin in Leningrad. Stories of hunger, of people dying in the streets, of bread rations raised to 300 grams being a moment of celebration. That night, she stared at her American dinner, chicken, potatoes, biscuits, feeling guilt burn in her chest. Irina's sister wrote from a factory far in the east, working 16 hours a day in freezing conditions. 12 women sharing one room, beds used in shifts. She asked if Irina was safe, if she had enough to eat. Irina didn't know how to answer. How could she write, "I eat 3 meals a day. I sleep in warmth. I take hot showers. The Americans barely notice us." How could she tell the truth? That captivity here felt easier than freedom at home? Slowly, the women began watching American soldiers differently. These men had grown up with full stomachs and clean clothes. They had no idea what hunger felt like. And day by day, that difference changed everything. The days blurred into routine, but the women's thoughts refused to settle. Everything they had witnessed in America clashed with everything they had been taught. And as the weeks passed, that contradiction only sharpened. You could see the change in their faces before anything else. Fuller cheeks, clearer skin, the quiet ease that came from regular meals and clean clothes. Even the way they moved was different. They no longer walked with that hollow, exhausted stiffness of people living on the edge of starvation. American rations, hot water, and simple hygiene had transformed them more than they wanted to admit. The contrast was everywhere. The Americans complained about tough meat or weak coffee, luxuries beyond imagination back home. They sent uniforms to the laundry every day, picking them up freshly washed and crisply pressed, as if endless supplies were normal. To the Soviet women, these shirts and trousers felt like symbols of everything they'd been denied. Katerina once held up an American shirt to the light, marveling at fabric that would have been considered high-quality civilian wear in the USSR. Her own uniform had been patched to the point of falling apart. Yet even more unsettling were the small, human interactions. A red-haired private, Johnny, or something like it, treated them like co-workers instead of prisoners. He showed them how to use the giant dishwasher, joked through gestures, and handed out chocolate as casually as if it grew on trees. Real chocolate. American cigarettes. A magazine with photos of his family standing proudly in front of a single-family home, something so ordinary for him, yet unimaginable for the women. Others were less warm but no less revealing. A senior sergeant showing Katerina a better way to scrub out a stain. An American nurse teaching Irina English medical terms one by one. Female officers who kept strict boundaries but ensured sick women received proper medical care, antibiotics, clean sheets, real attention. Nothing dramatic, just everyday professionalism. But professionalism itself felt like a luxury. None of this erased the fact that they were prisoners, but it did erode the hatred they were supposed to feel. The enemy didn't look like an enemy. They looked like people, well-fed, well-equipped, impossibly young people. After lights out, quiet conversations began. First, cautious observations. The food is better. The uniforms are so well made. The Americans aren't cruel. Then deeper questions. How can they afford so much? Why do ordinary soldiers live like this? Were we lied to? Irina was the first to say openly what many feared to think: we were lied to about everything. The silence afterward was long and heavy. Some women resisted, insisting this must be propaganda, a staged illusion. But no illusion could disguise the casualness of American abundance. Katerina found herself caught between worlds. She no longer believed the Soviet claims of superiority. Reality had crushed those beliefs, but she wasn't ready to idealize America either. The Americans spoke openly of their own flaws, their own injustices. Even that honesty felt foreign, almost impossible. The hardest question, the one no one wanted to face, came late one night. What happens when we go back? They all knew the truth. Returning home meant suspicion, interrogation, and judgment for having seen too much. By the 5th month, the transformation was undeniable. When an American photographer took official pictures of them, the women stared at images of themselves looking healthier than they had in years. Healthy in a way few Soviet civilians looked during wartime. The realization cut deep. The basic standard of treatment here was more compassionate than anything the Soviet system had ever provided them. Irina felt a sharp anger growing inside her, not directed at America, but at the Soviet government that had sent them to war without proper food, equipment, or honesty. She thought of the endless patched uniforms, the factories where people worked themselves to exhaustion, the families surviving on bread rations smaller than the scraps American soldiers threw away. In the end, it wasn't American kindness that shook their worldview. It was the simple fact that here, even as prisoners, they mattered more than they ever had as free citizens at home. And then, one morning in late spring, the camp exploded with celebration. Germany had surrendered. American soldiers shouted and embraced, dreaming of home. But for the Soviet women, victory only deepened the uncertainty. The war was over. Soon they would be sent back. Back to a homeland that would never trust them again. And yet the question hung over all of them. Would the Soviet government want them back now? Or were they trapped in a limbo where they belonged nowhere at all? One morning, while Katerina worked in the laundry as she had for months, the answer finally struck her. Not in words, but in emotion. She was ironing a uniform shirt, smoothing the collar until the steam rose like fog, the smell of clean fabric filling the room. Her hands moved with the rhythm she had learned here, steady and practiced. Then something inside her broke. Her breath caught. The iron slipped from her hand. And before she could stop herself, she began to sob, raw, shaking sobs that came from a place she had buried for years. She pressed her hands to her face, trying to hold herself together, but she couldn't. The room fell silent. Natasha froze. Other women watched, wide-eyed. The American supervisor hurried over, concerned, asking if she was hurt. Katerina couldn't answer. Not in Russian. And certainly not in English. How could she explain she wasn't crying from pain, but from clarity? Because she had realized, in that small mundane moment, that she did not want to go home. That she feared returning to the Soviet Union more than she feared captivity. That she would rather remain a prisoner in America than a free woman in her own country. It was a forbidden thought. A dangerous thought. But it was true. Natasha gently took her arm and guided her to a bench. She sat beside her without speaking, holding her hand until the sobs faded. When Katerina finally looked up, Natasha whispered, "I know. I feel it too." Around them, the other Soviet women nodded. Quiet admission of a truth none of them had dared to voice. The supervisor, understanding only the emotion, gave them time outside. They sat together in the spring sunshine, finally sharing the thoughts that had been building for months. "We can't tell the truth when we go back," Irina said. "We have to lie. We have to say it was awful here. That we suffered." The women agreed instantly. They knew the rules of survival. Say what the authorities want. Never praise the West. Never admit life could be easier elsewhere. Never reveal that the enemy had shown them humanity. "But we will know," Katerina whispered. "That knowledge won't leave us." Silence followed, heavy, resigned. The war was over. But now came the part they dreaded most. In June, the orders arrived. The Soviet women would be repatriated within weeks. Not to their homes, but to Soviet-controlled zones for investigation. The news stunned them. No one celebrated. No one even spoke. Their countdown had begun. Camp Shanks felt different during those last days. The women moved through their routines as if in a dream. The meals no longer brought comfort. Their clean bunks felt temporary, almost painful reminders of what would soon be lost. They practiced the lies they would tell. Food was scarce. We were worked mercilessly. We stayed loyal. We saw nothing good. They rehearsed until the falsehoods sounded natural. Americans, sensing the shift, showed small kindnesses during the final weeks. Extra chocolate, small gifts, gentle smiles they didn't realize were breaking hearts. The women accepted everything silently, knowing most of it might have to be destroyed before crossing into Soviet territory. The return voyage was calm, the accommodations decent, but dread shadowed every day. When they landed in a Soviet port, NKVD officers met them immediately. The atmosphere changed in a heartbeat. American warmth disappeared, replaced by cold authority. Interrogations lasted hours. The same questions, repeated endlessly. What did you see? Who spoke to you? What did you tell the Americans? They gave their rehearsed answers. But they could see it in the interrogators' eyes. They would never be fully trusted again. Most were eventually released, though several women disappeared into labor camps on vague accusations. The ones who made it home stepped back into a country still limping from war. Little food, shared rooms, constant fear. Katerina returned to Leningrad, to a communal apartment cramped with families stacked on top of each other. Her family embraced her with relief, but beneath their joy lay suspicion. She had been captured. She had been in America. That alone made her a risk. Life resumed, long shifts in a factory, rationed food, gray mornings. Outwardly, she lived as she was expected to. But inside, America lived on, the memory of warmth, of full plates, of dignity. Even something as small as the daily clean uniforms stayed with her like a wound that never fully healed. Years later, after Stalin's death, her daughter finally asked, "What was America like?" Katerina thought long before answering. "It was abundant," she said softly. "Not perfect, not equal, but abundant. They had so much that they didn't even think about it." Her daughter frowned. But we were told Americans live in misery. That capitalism creates suffering. There is suffering, Katerina admitted. But there is also plenty. Both are true. She told her daughter about the uniforms. How such a simple detail had shattered her certainty. How a single clean shirt had revealed an entire system behind it. Factories, supply chains, planning, care for soldiers as individuals. "Do you wish you had stayed?" her daughter asked. "No," she answered. "This is my home. My family is here. My language is here. But..." She hesitated. "I wish my country had learned what I learned." That scarcity is not destiny. Many women felt the same. Some never spoke about America again. Others, like Katerina, shared their stories only when the danger had lessened. All of them carried the same knowledge. Poverty was not inevitable. Life could be organized differently. A government could choose to serve its people. In the end, the clean uniforms became a symbol of everything they discovered. Not about America, but about possibility. About systems that worked. About human dignity. About what their own country might have been. The Americans never knew the impact they'd made. To them, clean uniforms were routine. To the Soviet women, they were revolution, quiet, undeniable proof that life didn't have to be defined by deprivation. Sometimes the smallest details reveal the biggest truths. And sometimes, the most powerful stories begin with something as simple as soap, hot water, and a crisp pressed shirt.